Welcome back to another Web3 NFT blockchain gaming video. Today we're going to be ranking all of the Force superpowers in Superior by Entertainment on the Gala Games ecosystem. Let's get to it. So with the recent Challenger run, which was Force only, I got to experiment with quite a lot of these skills and do weird and wacky combos and find out which ones are good and which ones aren't good. So let's kick it off right away with Absorbing Field. It's a passive skill, and when your force fields are destroyed, they will grant X overshield to nearby players. Now, this skill is good if you're playing in a team. However, in challenge runs, normally you're playing solo. So basically, it's going to be a C tier. Actually, no, you know what? It's going to be B tier because overshield is amazing. And it will be bumped up to A tier if you're playing with a team. Like if you're solo, then it's B. But if you're playing with somebody else, that overshield for them is just like an amazing boost for survivability. Next up, automatic transfer. It's a passive skill, and your automatic weapons absorb 5% of your enemy armor as overshield. Now this is also going to be in beta. Main reason being, I use automatic weapons all the time. 5% doesn't seem like a lot, but when you're doing just damage to enemy shields, you're going to get it back as overshield. Overshield makes you less killable, which is always a plus. But the only downside with this is it's only enemy armor, so you have to fight the tougher enemies to get the benefit of this. The normal scraps won't give you that much of a benefit, but it's still a good skill. Next up, Blade Bullets. It's a passive skill. On bullet kill, creates a force-filled blade. Now this is straight up A tier. Reason being it's A tier is because it's not just your bullet kills, like not from your weapon, it can also be from your turret weapons. This includes normal turrets, plasma turrets, laser turrets, shotgun turrets. Anything that shoots a bullet can create a force-filled blade. And once you start getting the upgrades that increase the damage of these blades, it's just amazing. It just creates like a force field of just like AoE blades that just keep enemies at bay, because anytime it's get hit by a bay, they get like a little animation, which means they get stuck for a bit, and it could be the difference between life and death in like challenger runs, especially on growth. Next up, Death Disc. It's a weapon skill, and what this does is it bombards enemies with force-filled blades that ricochet everywhere. Now, this is the bread and butter skill for the force tree. I'm gonna have to place this in S tier because this is what made the challenge runs actually doable. And since they ricochet, you're likely to kill more than one enemy or deal damage to more than one enemy, especially if you're in like a tightened corridor or a room. This skill is so much fun to use. And if you pair it with another skill, which I'll be talking about soon, it just makes the recharge just like instant. Next we have Efficient Field. It's a passive skill, and damage dealt by force fields is increased by base by X times 10% of the max health. So this skill is pretty good. I'm gonna have to place it in B tier. Main reason being is because it increases your damage of your force fields, and all of the force tree is basically either your blades or your force fields. So far the force tree is looking strong, but let's move on to the next one. Enforcer. It's a passive skill, and what it does is when you have overshield, double your force blade damage. Now this is A tier because I play Ronin and I have the skill unlocked where my overshield does not decay. So if I keep my overshield up, which is pretty much active all the time unless I'm fighting like a boss and they deal like nuke damage, but I have this active pretty much all the time, and that's basically double damage for free. It's insane. Next up, Explosive Barrels. It's a passive skill, and your force fields create X damage explosions when they break. So this is going to be B tier as well because the explosions is good AoE damage, and when your force fields get destroyed, it just gives a good staggering for like the hordes that come at you. Now we have a melee skill, and it's called the Force Blades. When you hold the charge melee button, it will create a force field blade. Your basic attacks knocks enemies back. So this is good at the start of the run when you don't have anything else to pick from, but I'm gonna have to put this in C tier. I was gonna put it in D. The reason it's C is the AoE, because it's a horizontal, not a vertical, and a horizontal covers more range and it can stagger more enemies, so this could save you in the pinch at like the start of your run. But apart from that, I hardly ever use it after like the first two map levels in a run. Next up, we have the dash skill, and it's called Force Dash. And when you dash, it creates a force-filled wall. Now, this skill is good because it gives you mobility. And I say any skill that gives you mobility is good because it's more survivability. And I'm going to place this B tier because you need to have this skill in order for the other 4 skills to take effect, because it creates a force field, and this comboed with a bunch of other ones is a really good combo effect, but it's basically B tier. Now we have the jump skill, which is force jump, and it launches upwards and creates a force field platform. I'm going to have to place this with C tier. This skill is really good for Nomad. Nomad with this skill is really good because it elevates you up, and that gives you access to your laser beams, and you could just spacebar and you'll be pretty much above most of the enemies, so you can get your laser beams off and you don't have to climb any terrains. However, I play Ronin and my playstyle is run and gun, so I'm hardly ever jumping to get above enemies. I just dash in front and for them and around them and use my shockwaves in close combat quarters to make them explode. So this skill goes to B if you're playing Nomad. I think if you're playing Murmur and Ronin, it stays at C. Next up, we have Force Overdrive, and when activating Overdrive, creates a force field dome that revives players, and your Overdrive charges faster. As with any Overdrive skill, it's going to be A tier. Main reason being, it's really good for teammates. You can just go up to them and then hit your Overdrive and they'll be revived. You'll create them a shield so they can get situated and not get hit right away, and it charges your Overdrive, so it's just win-win-win. Next up, we have Force Wall. It's a melee skill, and when you hold melee to deal X damage, you create a force field wall. Your basic attacks knock enemies back. So I'm going to have to put this in C tier, same reason being for the other one. It's good and all, it's good at the start of the run, but after you start getting some of these other powers, you're hardly ever using the melee in creating a force field. If you want to create a force field, you use the dash, and if you want to deal damage, you'll start using the blades. Next up, Hardened Field. It's a passive skill, and your force fields are larger. So I'm going to have to place this in C tier. Main reason being, your force fields are larger, but it means that enemies can hit the force fields. They have a better target to hit. So it can be good and bad. It's good if you have the plus force field health, but it cancels out because even if the shots were going to miss the smaller force field, it might hit the larger force field, reducing the health and destroying the force field faster. Next up, we have Hunting Blind. It's a passive skill, and after creating a force field, precision weapons deal an additional X damage plus 10% of your shield's max health for 3 seconds. Now this skill is C tier. From my perspective, I don't use precision weapons. If you're using Nomad, maybe this skill goes up a tier, but I find I hardly use precision weapons because things are dying before I even have to take aim. I normally hip fire and I'm normally running and gunning. So if you're a Nomad, this probably goes up to B tier, but it doesn't combo well, in my opinion, with the other 4 skills. Unless you have what it's mentioned, where you have a lot of force field health, then it could probably be substantial damage boost. Next up, we have Stinging Fields. It's a passive skill, and your force fields deals damage to enemies on contact. Now this is B tier because you can just create force fields and it will knock the enemies off and they'll be damaged. I think this also applies to your blade, so as soon as it hits them, they'll take damage as well. Next up, we got Pain Fields. Now it's a passive skill, and what it does is force fields deal plus 35 damage and extra X damage to enemies with armor. Now, I don't know where to place this skill. It can be C or B depending on the build you go with. But for challenger runs, I generally avoid this because I'm not fighting a lot of enemies with armor. But for normal gameplay, it's fairly good because extra damage is extra damage. So it could be B tier if you're not doing challenger runs, and if you are doing challenge runs, I'm gonna place it C tier because I'd rather pick up one of the other abilities rather than this one. Next up, we have Prep Time. And it's a passive skill, and what this does is gain plus 100% reload speed for 2 seconds after creating a force field. Now this is amazing. If you pair this with your dash, as soon as you dash away, it's going to reload your weapon, and this is really good combo with the blades, like the weapon blades, because you can just shoot a bunch of ricochet force blades, dash in that direction, reload the clip, so the force blade skill, and just do that again and just keep repositioning, and you basically kill everything in the room. So I'm gonna have to place this A tier when it's comboed with the force field dash and the blades. And if you don't have the blades, then this goes down to B tier, but it's still hovering high B tier. Main reason being is like weapon reloads are good and all, but the force field blades combo with all the other explosion force fields and extra damage and extra health and all that, it's just a win-win combo. And it's what got me through the challenger run and got me into the top 10 ranking. Next up, we have Riot Shield. It's a passive skill, and while aiming shotgun, it creates a force field shield. Now, the only time I've used this skill is to get the 15 different force skills for the achievement unlock. I hardly ever use this skill. I hardly ever use shotguns in Superior. I think shotguns need a buff, and this skill also needs a buff. It's going D tier. It's just like, I don't use the skill. It's not on my radar. Anytime it is on the list, I skim over it 100% of the time. And the final skill we have today in the force tree is Transfusion Shields. It's a passive skill. Killing enemies with force fields grants you 10 overshield. Now this is going to go straight up B tier because overshield is amazing. It makes you survive longer. It makes enemies harder to kill you. Paired with Ronin, as soon as I get this, I'm basically unkillable because I just pick up all the overshields and I have permanent overshields because I have the skill which makes overshields not decay over time. I think this skill could go up a rank if you're playing with Nomad or Murmur because they need overshields. I don't know how their overshield generation mechanism is, but because they're more squishy, they're more like glass cannons and they deal damage and less armor and health, I think overshields would be really beneficial to them. So it could possibly go low A tier, but it's definitely high B tier. And that is pretty much the tier list for the force superpowers in Superior. What do you guys think? Do you agree with the tier list? Do you not agree with the tier list? Like the previous one we did a couple of days ago, which was a fire tier list. You can find the link up here. If you agree, if you don't disagree, just leave a comment below. Let's have a discussion. Show me your view or perspective when you use the force skills in the challenger runs. If you did participate, if you didn't and you just use it in normal runs, what is your experience with these skills and how can we make these skills better? Like this skill, the D skill, it needs improvement, man. Like I think shotguns in Superior and this skill definitely need a good looking into. That's pretty much it for this video. Don't forget to hit that like button, smash that subscribe button, and turn on that notification bell because we plan to release more Web3 NFT blockchain gaming videos, and this is going to be your one-stop shop to get all the information you need about the Gala Games ecosystem, especially about Miranda's, The Walking Dead Empires, Lost Expedition, Superior, Spider Tanks, and many more. So I'll see you in the next video.